this video, I'm going to be doing a few recipes for, and the concept is college cooking. A viewer recently made this suggestion. They asked about recipes that might be good for a college student, and I thought that was such a great idea. Got me really excited to think about doing some things for you all that are very accessible, easy to do, generally affordable, and really give you some options for some different things to do if you're in more limited circumstances in terms of the space you have to work in, what you have access to, and things like that. So this is really about providing some tasty recipes that you could do in a small apartment or your dorm kitchen. So thank you so much for that suggestion. Obviously with ASMR, it's fun to do like a fancier dish with all of the prep, but that doesn't work so well in this scenario. So we're going to look at some different things. What I would say is that we're going to cover a range of things. There's some different ways to look at this challenge, but I wanted to focus on a few things. One is that it doesn't require a lot of complicated prep. The recipes are fairly easy. You know, if you don't have a lot of time, if your space limited, that stuff can be challenging. Secondly, also, a minimum of gear. You probably don't have a lot of stuff to work with and different tools, so we're going to keep it pretty simple on that front. So I do think you'll probably have a basic pot that you can boil water in for ramen or pasta. And along with that, some form of non-stick skillet. If you have a more modern non-stick skillet that can go in the oven, that is primo. But if not, we're going to work around that, of course. And then the last thing, in terms of cookware, is a baking dish of some kind. This is great. These Pyrex are wonderful tools. But if you don't have those options, I'm going to talk about other alternatives that you can do to make this work. And then I'm assuming you'll have some kind of kitchen knife, super handy tool, but I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Okay. And then kind of the last key pillar is keeping things affordable. I think we're all kind of budget conscious right now around groceries, so definitely a concern, especially if you're a student or someone starting out in your career. And so the dishes I've chosen, there's different angles we could have taken. Everything is a one-pot meal, which is super simple, or super, super affordable. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently, as we like to do on the channel. Kind of give you more of a spread. Certainly you can eat rice and beans, for cheaper than this, but I want to give some different options, and especially to get some nice fresh food in there, some nice, very tasty, but stuff that has good nutrients in there. Because I think about back when I was a student, you're eating dorm food, you're eating a lot of fast food, so maybe some nice things that you can do that are easy, but give you some more fresh options. So we're going to do a very simple one-pot soup. Using some very accessible ingredients. we're trying to make good stuff in a reasonable way, so this isn't going to be the fanciest version of anything. It's not about being the most authentic. Some of this may even horrify some of you, and that'll be fun. But it's really how can we make some good stuff in an accessible way. So a nice soup. I'm going to talk about how to get some veggies in that are just super easy, and a method you could use for a lot of different stuff. We'll also cover what to do when your fridge is completely empty except for, maybe ketchup, and you've bought the cheapest cut of meat. And then we'll finish with a real showstopper dish. It's one of the absolute easiest things that I know how to make, yet it's one of the tastiest. The return on investment here is off the charts. Touch more of a splurge, maybe relatively, but absolutely worth it. So we'll get into all of that. So let's go on a little journey. I'm not going to spend as much time on a given dish as in some of the other cooking videos. And we're going to cover a little more breadth instead, but we're going to keep the vibe nice and relaxed and chill and just make some delicious dishes that could be appropriate for someone in college or starting out. So great suggestion. I have ideas for more videos if folks like this. But let's see how we do here. All right, let's get started. All right, for my beverage, I have got this Hoplark sparkling water. It is a craft brewed sparkling water with hops. And I'm choosing this since I know as a college student, you are focused on studying and not getting mixed up with alcohol or partying in any way, which would obviously permanently ruin your future. So as one of our future leaders of society, I know you're sticking to non-alcoholic options like this. So let's crack this open and enjoy. Hoppy and refreshing. All right, let's get back to cooking. All right, let's get started on our first dish. This is a very simple chili chicken soup. Nothing fancy going on here. I'm going to use an onion, potato, like a russet, just some chili powder. We have frozen green beans and frozen corn. Could you use fresh corn? Absolutely. In the summer and season, it's pretty cheap, but it takes a lot more preparation effort. So doing this keeps it very simple to make quickly. I went ahead and bought some chicken broth for convenience. It's pretty cheap to make it from bouillon if you want to go that route, and it's perfectly fine. Nothing fancy. Have chili powder. We're going to use a tablespoon. If you can buy spices in bulk, I recommend it. They are so much cheaper. Not every store does it, and it seems like some have been getting rid of that option, but a lot of health food stores or nicer grocers have it, and even if they're more expensive normally, the bulk spices are such a deal compared to buying little jars constantly. So you could use whatever chili powder you wanted. It's just very basic, nothing fancy here. And then have a pre-made rotisserie chicken just to make life easy. Hopefully you're a civilized human being and have eaten the thighs and drumsticks and maybe the wings and are wondering what to do with that breast meat still on the carcass. Or if that's just your preference overall, of course. I like the dark meat. But you could use any of the meat from the chicken. We're just going to use the chicken breast, and I'm going to save the dark meat for other stuff. Could you use fresh, uncooked chicken breast? Absolutely, and just simmer it in the soup. But I'm going to make things easy here. So, as I said in the intro, if you don't have a lot of tools and don't have a chef's knife yet, I recommend that as an investment at some point. A chef's knife can basically do anything. This classic European style is very good for slicing and chopping and all of your basic kitchen tasks. If you don't have this, anything is fine. It is difficult to do a few tasks with this. For instance, peeling a potato. But it can, in fact, be done. Really though, for peeling, get yourself a peeler. These are very affordable. You probably know this already, but super, super easy to work with. So I'm just going to finish peeling the potato. So I did this cylindrical job on it. Do things a little bit differently here. But like I was saying, chef's knife is a great initial investment, particularly if you're someone who's into cooking. Developing the ability to use it will make life much easier in the kitchen. Help you get things prepped quickly and save yourself some time and trouble. Alright, so our potato is peeled. And if you don't have a chef's knife, you could use just about anything. This dull steak knife from the drawer probably won't work, but pocket knife will. But I'm just going to use a paring knife for what we're doing, just to show that it can be done. And it'll work just fine, but chef's knife definitely makes the job easy. So we got this potato peeled. I'm just going to cut it up into some chunks to go into our soup. This paring knife is nice and sharp, which is what makes this an easy job. Sharp knives make all the difference, and people like me are such huge advocates. You can judge me accordingly. Alright, so potato ready to go. Going to set that aside, and let's tackle this onion. cut off that root. We're going to cut off the top. And to help facilitate peeling, we'll cut it in half. Just going to grab an edge of the skin here. And peel that right off. A little straggler bit here. Okay. And same on this fella. All right. And then we're just going to do a rough chop on these. That slice through the middle just helps get a little more uniform size, but don't need a super fine dice or anything here. Let's chop off those little bits left by the core so we get as much onion as we can. And this type of task, as we're having that longer chef's knife, comes in handy. I find it's good to actually experience things and understand why to do something differently. I know me personally, I have a tendency to just read and adopt, but it can be good to have that experience. And then you know why you're switching, what you're doing, or the tool that you're using. Alright, so let's set this onion aside. Alright, so let's grab our chicken. And I haven't eaten anything off of this guy yet, so move some stuff out of the way. We're just gonna do a little cut along the breastbone. And one along that side there, just to make it easy to kind of free up the meat that we're working with here. So I'm just going to lift off those two breasts. Okay. And, you know, the skin in soup, it's nice flavor, but it can be kind of texture-wise end up a little bit slimy, so I'm gonna reserve that. Honestly, sometimes I just throw it in because I like the flavor, but that's really up to you. And we're just gonna kind of roughly chop this. You could just tear it apart by hand, honestly, if you wanted. Just get little chunks to go into our soup here. Alright, this is already cooked, so it's really just going to be about warming it and melding some of the flavors once it goes into the soup. But yeah, you could literally stand next to the pot when it's time to add the chicken and pull off bits from your rotisserie chicken and throw it in there. So it doesn't have to be fancy. Like I said, let's keep things simple. Alright, that is the prep that we need. Let's go ahead and cook this dish. Alright, for our chicken soup, just got a saucepan here. Just turn on the heat. Medium is good. Have 2 tablespoons of butter that we're going to melt in there. And when this butter melts, we're going to be sauteing our onions. Watched butter does not melt, as they say. Just kidding. It is getting nice and melty in there. I know with the higher sided pot you can't see as well what I'm doing in the pan, but for this recipe, not so critical. In the future, maybe we'll get some really awesome overhead drone footage going. Alright, so that butter is foaming, that moisture is leaving, which is good. I'm cooking that fat. Alright, so let's get those onions in. I'm just gonna move these around, get that butter on them. Nothing fancy. Just gonna cook them down for a few minutes. Get them translucent and soft. Have my trusty wooden spoon. But the choice of utensil is not critical here at all. Metal spoon, stir things around with a spatula, paint stir stick, it's all fine. And we want to go ahead and season those with some salt and pepper. And you don't have to do too much here. Just kind of mix it around. Make sure they all get some time spent frying in that butter. And as those are starting to soften up, we're going to add our next ingredient. That's going to be our chili powder. And we're going to do 1 tablespoon. And we're going to add that to our onions. Stir that in. And we're just gonna cook that for a couple of minutes. Get it a little toasty, take some of the raw edge off. And I've queued up my potatoes. Let's get this chicken stock ready to go. Because that is what's going to go in next. Alright, let's go ahead and add Alright, so the 4 cups of chicken stock. And we're going to want to bring this up to a boil with our potatoes. So we'll add those in. We'll get that boiling, and we're going to simmer for about 10 minutes. So let's get some heat going there. Alright, so we've hit the boil there. So let's turn the heat down to a medium low or low. We're just going to have it simmer, which is basically just bubbling, not like a full boil like this. And we've done most of the hard work at this point. After this is simmered for about 10 minutes, we'll be adding our chicken, frozen corn, frozen green beans. And that's really all there is to it. Very simple. The flavor overall is very much just the chili powder, but it's a nice mix of ingredients. Makes for a nice, easy to do soup. I don't think I've said where this recipe comes from, and it is from Rachel Ray. Yes, a recipe I got a number of years ago, and I've made it quite a number of times. Now we're making it here again. Okay, so we've been simmering for about 10 minutes, and what we're looking for here is that those potatoes are tender. They don't have to be completely falling apart done because we're still going to keep cooking this as we add the other ingredients, but at this point we basically do want them cooked. You know, if you take it farther and they break down, that's totally fine. But you probably want those kind of nice chunks of potato to add some texture and body to your soup. So, look like we were just about there. So I'm going to give it a second here, but then I'm going to start adding our final ingredients. So I have the rotisserie chicken that we cut up earlier. Let's go ahead and add. And we'll give that a stir here to get that started. And because we're going to be adding a lot of cold ingredients, chicken, but especially the frozen items, I'm going to give it some more heat because we're going to want to get those warmed up to finish the soup. Alright, so we have green beans, 10 ounces. Add those now. And those have been out of the freezer for a moment. It's fine to leave them in. We're just going to heat it up, bring them up to temperature, so you don't have to defrost them or anything. And then I have the 16 ounces of frozen corn. Let's gently stir stuff in here. It makes for a nice veggie heavy soup. Still got that protein in there. And those were frozen, right? It's like adding ice to this, so keep that heat up. And we're just gonna take this until the chicken is warm. The corn and green beans have gotten hot. No need to cook anything more than that. And so we're just going to let this go for a few more minutes while we get everything nice and hot. And then we will be ready to serve. Alright, this next dish is a great way to prepare vegetables. Super easy to do. We're just going to be roasting. So we're preheating the oven to 425 degrees. And this is where you're going to need a roasting pan. So you could use this, right? I'm going to use Pyrex because this is what I typically roast in. Works great. Very easy to use. There are a lot of options for what you could do here. Do you have a rimmed baking sheet that may be used for cookies or other baking? Do you know someone who has one? You could literally put out some aluminum foil, a couple layers, make a rim out of the foil and use that. Or at the grocery store, they sell aluminum foil baking trays, and you could use one of those. They have like giant ones for turkey and smaller ones for cakes. That'll work just fine. You could even do like a half batch, one of those aluminum trays that like some takeout comes in. So really flexible. The Pyrex I find works well. It's less likely to burn. But like when it comes to roasting vegetables, you want a lot of brown. You want that good flavor. If you get a little bit of black edge here and there, totally fine. So we're going to be doing roasted potatoes with some red onion, some red wine vinegar, and olive oil, and a little bit of thyme. I happen to have fresh thyme here. If you have dried thyme, totally fine. Just be sparing if you're using dried thyme. Dried herbs have a much stronger concentrated flavor than fresh, so just use a little pinch. And it is to taste, really. The original recipe for this, I think, came from a cooking magazine, but literally the magazine Cooking, and they called for sherry vinegar. But like roasting vegetables is a very free form thing. So let's look at this and we can talk about some alternatives too. So I've switched over to my chef knife just to make this prep a bit easier as we do the rest of this work. We've got quite a few things to go through. I'm going to take off that root end, but in this case we're definitely going to be wanting to leave the pieces of the onion kind of attached so you get more of a block of vegetable than like really separated slices, just to help match the cooking time with the potatoes. So we'll have that. This onion is actually fairly large. For this I might have gone a little bit smaller normally, but you just use what you find. And precise measurements are particularly not important here. Okay. What I'm going to do is now quarter these. And we're using that root to help hold this together, but I'm going to go ahead and do thirds of those. And see, that's where it's a little bit tougher to hold together when you go that thin. That's okay. I'm just going to throw this in my roasting pan. You see the way these ones are kind of held by the root, but that gives us chunks sort of like the potatoes. Like a little bit smaller onion, you can just go into those quarters and have no trouble. So we tossed all those guys in there. And then for our taters, let's just have these. And generally, the more things are similar in size, the more the cooking time will match for the different pieces. So mostly those potatoes were about the same size. Could be more fussy about cutting up some of the larger ones, but it's going to be totally fine. And what we're going to do is we're just going to hit these with some olive oil. I often use canola oil when roasting. Has a high smoke point, but you can use whatever. If you want the flavor of olive oil, that is fine. Then we're also going to hit this with some of this red wine vinegar. And like I said, it doesn't matter too much what you use. They'll all be good. Give this some acid. And we're just going to mix this together. We want to get that oil onto the bottom of the pan. And we want our vegetables to get kissed with all that vinegar and oil. Oops. Escapee. Alright. And it can be nice to get the cut side down on the potatoes, but it's not important. Just gonna get those all situated in here. And really this is about all there is to it. That's gonna roast for a while. We'll probably get a stir closer to the end just to help roast different bits. I did a quick little hand wash off the cam there to get that oil off my hands. And then we want to hit this with seasoning. We want some salt and pepper on there. Move that around a little bit. And let's get some pepper. We have some nice seasoning here. Okay, and I'm not adding the thyme. So the thing with roasting is you can throw vegetables in, you roast them. Some things cook faster than others. Carrots or Brussels sprouts could take longer. More delicate things go faster, but there's really nothing to it. But you do want to think about what might burn. So that thyme could burn in the hot oven. So we're going to add that basically at the end to get all that nice fresh flavor at the end. So this is going to go into the oven. And it depends. I don't know. We'll check it at like 30 minutes, maybe, see how things are doing. But this is a very general method. You could cut some carrots up into matchsticks, toss them with some oil, salt, and pepper, roast those. Then you could take some softened butter, mash it up with some herbs like thyme or dill, and at the very end, so those are coming out of the oven, you could toss that butter in and let it melt in there. Again, not at the beginning, not to burn things, but you could do a lot of different stuff here. Brussels sprouts with bacon. So super easy to do. Just throw your veggies into the roasting pan and let's get that in the oven, okay? Okay, so our potatoes have been in the oven roasting. Let's pop those out and have a look. And this is what we want to see. We've got some browning on the potatoes, These onions have got a little bit of black, and that's okay. I think I could have pulled this out a few minutes earlier, but certainly I'm not unhappy here. You can see, yeah, there's a few places where it's a little blacker. So we could do this as is, but typically in a roast like this, yeah, this is all in a pretty happy place, but as I was saying, typically in a roast like this, I'll do a stir like this and roast for just a few minutes more so we get some coverage. Different bits get to touch that pan and get roasty. And the other thing we're going to do is add those herbs. So let's just get some thyme leaves in there. So some fresh thyme in there. Just mix that around just a touch. And since we're doing this at the end, we're not worried about that burning. We're just going to do a quick few minutes to roast that just a little bit more. Okay. All right, so there are roast red potatoes and red onions with some thyme and some red wine vinegar. Very delicious stuff. All right, for this next dish, let's go a little bit off the beaten path here. So this is the dish that you make when basically your fridge is empty. All you've got is some ketchup in there. You have an onion and you have bought the cheapest cut of meat you could find at the store. Here I have some top round, which I got as buy one, get one free. So only a couple dollars. It's cheap because it's not everyone's favorite cut. But we're going to do it in a gravy, and it's going to be perfectly edible, and it'll be quite tasty. It's a little bit different, not for everyone, but like I said, this is when you're down to the last stuff in your pantry and need a home-cooked meal. So we're going to start with an onion. And we're just going to slice it up. Take off the top, take off the root. We'll slice in half. Slightly fussy. It's okay. The uncooperative vegetables always show up for your special ASMR shoot. Alright, so we're just going to slice these. That is all we have to do for our onion. Now, what's our next step? Well, I have got measuring cup and ketchup. So let's do 1/2 cup of ketchup. This is perfect as we're using up the end of this ketchup. Alright, there's our new ketchup to get us to 1/2 cup. Okay, so at this point you probably think we're pretty crazy. So what's going on here? Well, this recipe is interesting because it is extremely authentic. And, you know, I've talked a little bit about some of my feelings on this, but you think, oh, a sauce made with ketchup, that doesn't feel very authentic. Well, it is a dish that is authentic to the Croatian immigrant community. Really straight from the source. My suspicion, because there are, you know, plenty of recipes in the old world that cook beef in a tomato sauce in that part of the world, I suspect that this is an old world recipe that was adapted to affordable New World ingredients once folks had immigrated. But I can't attest to that. It's a theory. But ketchup basically is a tomato sauce. probably sweeter than maybe what we'd think, and that is going to be one defining aspect of this dish. It will be a fairly sweet gravy, but this is something that you can make with very humble ingredients. So I've got half cup of ketchup, and I'm going to add some water, and just gonna start mixing here, blend this together, or thinning this ketchup out. And we're going to do half cup of water, so we'll get to a full cup here. And just mix that. Okay, that's all we need to do there. We'll set that aside. And one more thing. We're going to make a little slurry to thicken this gravy. Got some flour. Just grab a couple tablespoons. And a quarter cup of water. Just going to be a thickening agent for us. I'm going to switch to a fork because what we don't want are clumps. You could use a little whisk, you have one, or do this in a bigger bowl with a regular whisk. Just try to get a smooth mixture. You could make this dish without this step. It's kind of thickens it up, ties it all together. A few more calories from the flour. Okay. Let's trade our onions for our beef. Alright, so I've got about a half pound here. Let's just cut this in half. So we'll have two little steaks, basically. And you could tenderize this with a meat hammer. Meat Hammer is a band I would want to be in. That's awesome. You could pound on it with the end of your knife if you want to be a little less delicate. I just want to expose a little more surface area. This cut can be a little tougher, which is why people will tenderize it a bit. You know, I don't think that's as important, but a lot of people like it that way. But I'm just gonna kind of press down some of the painter. I mean, you can really whack it if you want. So one of the least ASMR things you can do. So just pound it out just a touch here. You could go really aggressive if you want. And getting it a little bit flatter will help it cook quicker because we're just going to go really fast in the pan. Okay, so all we need to do, make sure we get some seasoning on here. So some salt and black pepper. And we'll use the tongs to press that in. Flip it over, we'll kind of hit those edges as we do, or the stuff that has kind of missed the top surface. And we'll season the other side. Nice bit of salt on here. And again with the pepper. All right. That is all we need to do. And let's get this cooked up. All right, let's make our steak in catsup gravy. I've got the skillet heating here. Let's add some oil. We're gonna do a quick fry on these steaks. I have not yet done the leveling on the stove. Tilt's not too bad, but wish it was a little more even. That would be a baller ASMR video, leveling my stove. Let me know if you're desperate to see that. Alright, so our oil is hot. Let's get these steaks in there. Get my onions at the ready there. I'm just gonna cook for a minute or two on each side. They're pretty thin. You could have pounded them out thinner and then they'll go very quickly. I'm going to move them around to help get that even brown. It's starting to happen. I'm not precious about not touching your searing meat. You can really help yourself by moving it around some. Alright, let's go ahead and flip. Okay, pretty good. Let's back off the heat just a little. A little cook on the edges too. It can be pretty smoky and searing like this. Let your fan going. Okay, I'm going to pull these off. Alright, so I did wipe out some of the darker juices from the pan. Normally could keep going here, but it was a little hotter than I wanted on some of that, and don't want the onions to be too blackened by it. So did a little wipe out and sprayed out a little more oil. And then we're just going to start frying our onions. Just want to soften these up. Alright, letting those get nice and happy. Happy is not what Emerald says. Like he's unavoidably part of my DNA. But that's totally fine. We won't finish with any loud bangs to disturb your slumber. Just turn down the heat a little. I don't want these too brown. Some of that's just from what was left on the pan. But I do want them soft. The ketchup's already going to be sweet, so we get these onions super caramelized and sweet. That just kind of adds to that. So I'm not going to go too far with it. We do want them to be softened up. Starting to look pretty good here. Alright, so I've got those onions going. Let's add our ketchup. Let's give this a stir here. Turn the heat down here. Mix that together. Just really want to simmer here, so turn that down. And let's get some salt and pepper in here too. Okay, so this is already thickening up and coming together. It's going to give a stir to my flour and water thickener. And I don't have to use all of this. I'm probably just going to use a little bit, actually. I don't really want this too thick and claggy, so let's just get a little in there. And we'll work that in. Just kind of get things to bind together. And I'm just going to cook this for a little bit. And then I'm going to put my steak back in there. I'm actually going to slice it up and put the slices in. You could just serve it to people and you can top with the gravy. But I want it to cook in there just a little bit and pick up some of those flavors. So let's just do that really quick here. Alright, so our steak is looking nice. Let's go ahead and drop these in. Just kind of get them warmed up in the sauce here. And let me slice up this fella as well. And I'm going to slice these fellows in half, since they're a little bit larger. Okay, let's stir these in. So, like I said, this is not some fancy gourmet dish, but it is something that you can make with really basic and inexpensive ingredients that you have around. Right, so that is really all there is to it. We can do a little taste and see if we need a little more salt or pepper. That is pretty good, but I think I do want some more pepper. Alright, and that is a Croatian steak in catsup gravy. Alright, this last dish is really the showstopper here. This is an amazing dish. It is not hard to do. It doesn't have too many ingredients, and they're simple stuff to obtain and work with. But the payoff at the end is so high. The return on investment for this dish is maybe the best of any dish that I know. We're basically going to fry chicken with shallots, garlic, and herbs. And when I say fry, we are going to sear it first, but then it's just going to go into the oven in some olive oil. This dish comes from Alton Brown, and it's really a work of art. I think you could use different herbs if you wanted, but this combination is amazing. We're going to use parsley, sage, and thyme. And as he points out, no rosemary. Can be an overpowering flavor. And thus we use these three in this dish. So this is the dish to make if you want to impress someone. Obviously it's going to cost a little bit more to get things like fresh herbs, unless you happen to grow them yourself in a windowsill or something like that. And chicken can be pricier. I found some chicken thighs on sale, so it was pretty cost effective to do this today. You can also buy a whole chicken and break it down, which can be cheaper, but that's a more complicated process. So if you want to do a little bit of a splurge, go for this dish. If you make it in your dorm kitchen, you're going to have people investigating because it smells so good while cooking. If you want to impress a date or maybe your parents to show that you're grown up and responsible enough for them to release your trust fund to you, great choice. So let's go ahead and get started. And these days I make it all in one cooking dish, like a skillet such as this that can go directly into the oven from the stovetop, or have a casserole type dish that can go on the stove and then into the oven. But today I'm going to make it the way that I have made it for most of my life, which is we'll sear the chicken in a skillet, and then we will transfer it to a baking dish. Okay? And this will be easier for you to see what I'm doing here as well. All the things I said earlier about a baking dish apply. So if you just go get an aluminum tray from the grocery store, that will work just fine. So we're going to need 5 garlic cloves. Alright, so a couple of these were a little small and I like garlic, so I'm going to go with 6. So all we're going to do is just get the peel off of those. And just move my shallots to make a little space for myself. Let's just slice off the root end here. It'll make it a little bit easier just to get the peels off here. Put the whole cloves in so we'll get nice and toasty in there without burning. A couple of those were a little stubborn, so just a little press to get that skin to loosen. I want to keep them intact. And I'm going to put these into my baking dish. Everything's going to go in there. So let's just get our shallots going. Cut off the root. And we'll cut in half. Get those peeled here. So these smaller ones, I'm just going to put right in there. And these I'll just slice, just to make them a bit smaller. 5 cloves of garlic and 5 shallots. We're trying to keep the root end so these stay together as they're cooking. Alright, just about there. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got shallots and garlic cloves in here. We're going to see our chicken and we'll tuck it in. And what we want to do is add 1/4 cup of olive oil. It's just going to be the most amazing herb and garlic and shallot infused oil as this cooks. And then we're also going to throw in some sprigs of herbs. So I have some sage here. We'll put in, and some sprigs of thyme. And also some sprigs of parsley. I'll just put all these in here. So fragrant and delicious already. And we're going to get that chicken in there once it is browned. And this will cook covered. So if you have like a skillet with a lid, that is perfect. Makes it easy. Gonna do this the old-fashioned way. Some aluminum foil. just getting this ready, and let's do the chicken. Alright, so I have some chicken thighs. These are bone in and with skin on, as you can see. These are pretty big, especially this guy is Mondo sized. If they were smaller, I would go with 5 for this recipe proportion. But we're going to go with the 4. And we just need to do a very simple prep. We're just going to salt and pepper. Got my tongs so I can manipulate the chicken without having to touch it. And let's get the other side as well. Get some nice seasoning on this. Right, and that'll help with the browning as well. So let's get this cooking. Alright, we've got the pan heating here on the stove. Let's add a couple tablespoons of olive oil. We'll want to get this nice and hot. Olive oil has a low smoke point, so we don't really want it, super smoking, but we want this nice and hot so we get a good sear on these chicken thighs, get some of that skin browned up to give it some wonderful flavor. Then it'll finish frying in the dish in the oven. My oven is set at 350 degrees. Alright, I think we are ready to go here. Just a little bit of water in the pan causing those pops. That's why you want that nice sizzling sear. Let's just let those sizzle. the good stuff happening. Sizzling, getting some browning on that skin, getting some wonderful smells in the kitchen. Chicken is arguably my favorite food. I love fried chicken. I love chicken all kinds of different ways. So this dish is so good. I'm very excited about it. What we want to see is some nice browning and crispiness in that skin. All we're doing here is getting some of that browning, and then it'll finish its cook all the way through in the oven. We'll go ahead and ready the baking dish. It has all of our wonderful aromatics in it. So much beautiful color. The purple shallots and the green from the herbs. Appetizing just to look at. Kept things nice and hot here on the fire. So we want to get that fried, not boiling from all the liquid coming out of the chicken. Alright, and we're getting that browning on the bottom as well. Kind of get all around, do a quick hit on the sides here. Otherwise, we are ready to incorporate this. I'm going to turn off my stove. And let's tuck these guys into our dish. Alright, that was a lot of excitement and energy there. Gonna kind of get these chickens tucked in so they're in contact with the bottom of the dish here. If you are using the same dish, and chicken's already in there, and you can kind of tuck stuff around it. But yeah, this is going to work just fine. So let me set my tongs down. Alright, so this beautiful array of chicken and shallots and herbs is ready to cook in the oven. Let's just put our foil on. All right. Our packet is ready to go. It is going in the oven. Alright, so our chicken has been baking about an hour and a half. Now, the temperatures they give for chicken being done, for something like breast, sometimes it can be actually overcooked. So those tend to err on the side of safety. But thighs actually benefit from cooking a bit longer, even up to like 190 degrees if you're using a thermometer. Just you don't really want that uncooked chicken feel to your thighs. So cook it to your preference, but definitely want it nice and done so it's just wonderful and falling off the bone. So let's have a look. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Nice toasty little chickens in there. Aromatic oil bath. So wonderful. So let's serve that up and take a look at the things that we've made. Alright, so let's start with our chili chicken soup with corn and green beans. Now, of course, you could eat it like this, but it does get a topper. And off the heat in the edit here, I did add some more salt. It's quite a bit of volume with that corn and green beans, and so it did want just a little more seasoning. So always taste and get a feel for if you need to add more. Alright, so let's put a nice dollop of sour cream on there. Add some wonderful richness, that tang, such a great pairing. And we just used chili powder. You could add a bit of cayenne if you wanted this hotter, or your favorite chili sauce. So we have some Yellowbird habanero condiment. And I'm just gonna touch up that sour cream with a little bit of extra heat. If you can see that, I mean, this thing's basically Michelin star now. Look at those skills. Alright, nice, hearty, enjoyable, and comforting soup. And then we have our roasted potatoes with red onion and thyme and vinegar. Those nice brown bits. Onions nice and soft. Potatoes creamy and delicious. So good. And then we have our Croatian ketchup steak. Very simple, humble dish, but flavorful. And something that can be enjoyed when you don't have much else. Alright. And then I'm gonna set that here so we can make room for our chicken. Alright, and here it is. So you can see that nice crispy skin. These shallots are so soft, just melty, delicious, and of course that garlic has just really turned into a paste basically, so you can smear that onto the chicken. So good. You could serve this with these roast potatoes, which are very similar feel actually, but if you just had regular potatoes, that garlic and shallot put on top of those would be amazing. I have seen it done where you just slice up some potatoes like that and put them in with the chicken. I don't do it that way, but it can be done and it is good. Alright, so those are our 4 dishes designed to be made fairly simply with fairly accessible ingredients, fairly affordable, particularly if you look for deals on your proteins. And hopefully this is something that you might be able to enjoy on your journey through college or even after. As I said, I still make these, so now I'm just gonna pig out and dive in. Alright, have a wonderful night.